Okay, class, today I'm going to teach you chapter 8, which is array. Okay, are you ready, guys? Ready?
Ready, doctor.
Okay, I have recorded as well. Okay, so for chapter 8, we will learn about array. Okay, array is something like in this, what we call this one, compartment. There are few compartments that you can store any data. So array is something like that. Okay. Okay, so outcome of this topic or of the chapter is to understand the concept of array and multidimensional array, to implement the array concept in your program, to implement the array concept in function, and also to implement concept in matrices operation. Okay, however, for matrices operation, I will not go detail because I've been told by your faculty that this one is actually once the array has been covered, basically matrices operation is covered. Okay. So I'm not going to go detail. I'm only will tell you about the what are the library that you can use in order for you to do the matrices operation. Okay. Okay. And then there are more tutorial that you can refer. Okay. These are the tutorials. Okay. Okay. Before we go further, we take a look about on the introduction. Okay, so what is array? Array is a list. Okay. Sebelum ni, previously I always mention about list. Okay. So array is a list of more than one variable having the same name and data type. Okay. So basically you have create a variable with the same name, but inside that variable you can have many more data, many more variables, and that variable must be same data type. Okay. And then array can hold more than one value at a time. Okay. The value inside the array element can be accessed by referring to index number in a row. Okay. So as I always mentioned to you before, when I introduce you with list, I always said about the index. Okay. So array is when you want to access value in array, you can access it by refer to the index number in a row. Okay. So now I'm going to explain to you 1D array, one dimensional array. Okay. Okay, index number in 1D array started from 0. Okay. For example, we have this one. We have variable, the name is age. Okay. And then inside our age, we have many variables with the same data type, which is we have age 23, age 32, 18, 20, and 35. Okay. So basically in your in your memory, or when compiler compile your program in your memory, it will be like this. Okay. You have one variable name, which is age, and then for this variable or array, you can have many variables with the same data type. For age index 0, you have 23. Age index 1, you have 32. Age index 2, you have 18. Okay, based on this value. Okay. Okay. This one, this what we call this age variable ni, index that you refer based on index, we call as a element in array. Okay, we call as a elements in array. Okay. Okay, so this is basically what is a array. Okay, can I proceed, class?
And doctor.
Okay, because before this like this, right? You can only have age, let's say age equal to 23. And if you want to have another age, you need to create another variable. Let's say age 2 equal to 32. Okay. So, why we need to do like this? It is we just wasting our memory. So, instead of doing like this, we just create an array. Okay. So, we just create one variable name, but we can have many variable or many value with the same data type. Okay. Okay. Array. Okay. This one. Okay. Okay. This is example of normal variable. Let's say we have matrix ID 1 to store this value, matrix ID 2 to store this value, and matrix ID 3 to store this value. The data type for these variables is string. Okay. So instead of we have 1, 2, 3, we can have only one variable, which is matrix ID. Matrix ID name. The name is matrix ID. And then inside that matrix ID, we can store many variables value. Okay, with the same data type, which is string. Okay. Okay, so this one we refer to matrix ID 0. This one we refer to matrix ID 1. This one we refer to matrix ID 2. Okay. We have 3 elements of array. Okay, in each element we can refer based on the index here. Okay. Okay, so basically if compiler compile this statement inside your memory, it will be like this. You have one matrix ID, and then you can have many elements there. So you can have matrix ID 0, matrix ID 1, matrix ID 2 that store different data or different value. Okay. Different value with a different values but with the same data type. Okay. Okay. Next, we move to this one. Okay, in your normal variable, you do like this. Matrix ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, and you store the value in the respective variables. And then when you want to print it, you will print like this. Matrix 1, matrix ID 1. Matrix 2, matrix ID 2. Matrix 3, matrix ID 3. So this is the output. Okay. So in array variable, you can do like this. Okay. You just put matrix ID and then bracket. Inside that bracket is your index. Okay. So your index in row. Okay. So if you print matrix ID index 0, it will print the first one. If you print matrix ID 1, you will print the second matrix ID. If you print matrix ID 2, it will print the third matrix ID. This one, okay? 0, 1, 2. Okay? Okay. Understand, guys?
Understand, doctor.
Okay, so I don't need to debug this one, okay? This one is very simple. Okay. Okay, however, in my example now, we only have 3 elements. 1, 2, 3. How about what if the values in the array up to 100 or 1000? Okay, so the index will be from 0 until 99 if 100. Okay. In order for you to access that array value, either you want to input or you want to make output, you need to use repetitive statement, which is for loop. Okay, because like this, if you still maintain this way, it will be very tedious job. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until 99. So this is not good. Okay, when you use array, this exercise is not good. Okay. So you can use like this. You can use repetitive statement, which is by using for loop. Okay. Okay, so how to use the for loop is like this. First, you need to have this for looping. For index. Index here is your row index. Okay. For you to refer to this one. Okay. 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So you can have for index. Index here means that the variable name for your index lah. Okay. You can change this name. Let's say you want to put row. Okay. Okay. There is no problem. Let's say you want to put for IND pun okay. Okay. Because this one is only variable name. You can change it. Okay. Okay. So for index in range, okay, this is syntax for looping, okay. For index in range, which range? Okay, because now here we want to know how many loop that our for looping must be looped, okay. So that's why we have length, in which length? Based on metric ID length. So length, metric ID. So when you use function length, it will get what is the length size for your metric ID. So in this case, what is the length for metric ID class? What is the length for our metric ID?
3.
3, correct. Okay. So here, your for looping here, our for looping here will be looped 3 times. Okay. Okay, so when it loop 3 times, they will look like this. Matrix, metric ID, the first index is 0. So it will print this value. Okay. And then after that, when looping loop to the second loop, which is index 1, it will print this one. And when looping loop to the third time, which is index 2, it will print this one. Okay. Okay, jom kita debug. Introduction. Good. Okay, this one. Okay. Okay, so now we want let's debug. Okay. Okay, so you can see here we have our metric ID in array list, and then we have 3 elements. For each element, we can refer it based on our index, which is index 0, this one. Index 0 refer to the first element. Index 1 refer to the second element. Index 2 refer to the third element. Okay. Now we move to the for looping. For index in range length of metric ID, which is 3. So now we know that our for looping will be looped 3 times. Okay. Starting from 0. Okay. So you can see now index is 0. Okay. This is index equal to 0. Okay. Now we want to print matrix. Okay. Index 0 plus 1. Okay. Okay class. Here, index 0 plus 1 is nothing to do with your array. Okay. This one only to guide user. To guide user, to let user know. Currently, we are in metric number 1. Okay. Next, we will be at metric number 2. Okay. So, index plus 1 here is nothing to do with array. Okay. If you don't want to put index plus 1 pun, okay. Okay. Tak ada masalah. Okay. Okay. Now, we move to the next. Matrix ID, index, current index is, what is our current index class? What is our current index? Cepat kelas, cepat. Apa current index kita?
0.
0. Okay, correct. So, our current index is 0. So, means that it will refer to AA19809. Okay, it will refer to the first element. And then it will print the first element here. Metric 1 AA19809. Okay. Okay. Next, it will loop to the second looping, which is index 1. Okay. So now our index will be index 1. 1 plus 1 will equal to 2. Okay. Metric ID index 1. We refer to the second element, which is KA19056. Okay, so we will print that one. Okay, so now here is the output for the second element. Okay, next we move to the next loop, which is index 2. Okay, so again 2 plus 1, 3. Metric ID index 2 refer to the third element. What is the value for the index 2 class? What is the value? Index 2. Cepat kelas, cepat. Mana? What is the value for
KA
metric ID?
KA 20397.
Okay, bagus. Good. So, we refer to this one. So, kita pun print. Okay. Done looping. Okay, because we already reach 3 times of loop. Okay. Faham That's how that's how array working when we use for. Okay. So, kalau let's say we have metric ID until 1000, so there is no problem here. You can do it. Okay, because you use for looping. Okay. Boleh kelas? Faham? Faham Okay. Okay, now we want to let user to enter the input to the array list. Kalau yang ini, this one, we initialize the value. Okay. We initialize the value of this metric ID. Now, we don't want to do like this. What we want to do is, we want to let user to enter the input, okay, to the array list. Okay. Okay, there are few steps. There are three steps. Okay. The first step is, you need to define length of the list. Okay. How to define the length of the list? Whether by predefined or ask user to define it. Okay. For example, you can ask user, how many number of student? So you can put, let's say, you can store that number of student in variable num_stud. Okay. Second step, you need to create an array list with the length size based on step number 1. Okay. So the syntax is like this. Your variable name, okay, we use the same variable name, metric ID equal to, okay, the syntax is, firstly, you must put this bracket. Okay. Inside this bracket, kalau if before this, inside our bracket, we automatically initialize the value. But now, we need to do like this. We need to create the array list by having 0. 0 means that our starting index. Okay. 0 for index. This is variable name for index. In range, in which range of our array list size is based on num student from here. Okay. So let's say user said they want to create to enter 100 matrix ID. So here will be 100. Okay. So your matrix ID will have the length size of 100 elements. Okay. Starting from 0 until 99. Okay. So this is the meaning of this syntax. Okay. And then again, 0 is the first index. Okay. In our array. The third step is use for loop statement to add value into the element of the array based on the defined length. Okay. This is the example. You ask user, okay, now starting from now, I don't want to use eval anymore. Okay. I will use integer because I know that num student cannot be float, cannot be string. So it must be integer. So I will put integer here. So you have one variable name, num student, num stud, and then you will ask user number of student. Okay. So here means that user will define the length of the list and will be stored in num student. Okay. Num stud. Okay. Tertinggal U kat sini. Okay. And then after that, the next step is we need to create an array list. Okay. So we have variable name, matrix ID, and then we will create the array list, array length, okay, list length. So we have 0 for index, in range, num student, okay. And then after that, we will enter the element of the array list by using for looping, okay. So we have for index, in range, in which range, which is based on num student. Let's say this one is 100, so here also will be 100. So means that your looping will be loop 100 times. Okay, starting from 0 until 99. Okay, and then here I'm going to print the matrix. Okay, sorry, this is not print. This is I'm going to ask user to enter the matrix ID into the array element. Okay, so I'm going to have this one, matrix ID index equal to input. Okay, if previously when we use a normal variable, we will do like this, matrix ID equal to input. Right. However, when we use array, we need to add here. We need to add the index. Okay. So we need to add the index here. Okay. So this is the index variable that we use, index. Okay. Okay. And if you want, this one is to enter the value. Okay. Now, if you want to print out the value, you must use as well the for. Okay. For looping. For index in range num student, and then you will print it. Okay. So as well, here you need to refer to the element by using this index. Okay. Okay. So let's say user said number of student is 2. Okay, and then user will enter matrix ID 1, this one, matrix ID 2, this one. So you will again, we print out this value. Okay, let's debug. Okay, user input. Okay, this here. Sekejap ya, saya tutup yang ni sekejap. Okay, now we ask user how many number of students. Let's say I put 3. Okay, when we create this array list, it will define the array list size. Okay, the length size of this array list. So our array list size, length size is based on num student. Okay, so that's why we can have range 0 until 3. Okay, so that's why we have like this. We have 3 element, 3 element of matrix ID. Okay, and then automatically it will put the initialized value, which is 0, 0, 0. Okay. Okay, now we move to the for statement. For index in range 3, which is starting from 0 until 2, we will ask user to enter. Again, this index plus 1 is nothing to do with array. This one just a guide for the user. Okay. Okay, so now we will print this one. Okay, matrix ID index, current index is 0. So we will ask user to enter. Let's say I enter. Okay. So now you can see here, KA21999 already entered into the first element, which is index 0. Okay. Next, we go to the next one, to the next element, which is index 1. Okay, so now you can see here, this is index 1. Do the same thing. Okay, we ask user to enter to the matrix ID index 1. Okay, so now you can see it's already entered into the second element, KA12999. Okay, next we move to the next looping, which is index 2, the last looping. Okay, so let's say I put here AA20. Okay, so you can see here we have AA2876 in our third element of matrix ID. Okay, so this 4 settled. We settle this 4 because we already reached the third looping. Okay, now we want to print out. Okay, so we want to print out your student. Okay, again we will use looping for index in range 3 starting from 0 until 3 until 2. Okay, we will print again this index plus 1 is nothing to do with array. You can delete it if you want. Okay, but we want to guide user. We want to tell user currently you are in metric 1. Okay, in metric 2, in metric 3. Okay. Okay, now we want to print metric ID index 0, which is KA 21999. Okay, so we can print here. Next, we move to the next looping, which is index 1. Okay, here we will refer to matrix ID index 1. What is the value for matrix ID index 1, class? Cepat.
KA12999.
Okay, good. So, we will print this value for the second element, KA12999. Next, we move to the last loop, which is index 2. So, we will have matrix ID index 2. We refer to AA20876. Okay. So, we will print that one. And then done. Okay. Understand, class? Okay tak, class?
Okey, doktor.
Yeah. Orang lain okey tak?
Okey, doktor.
Okay. Okay, kalau okay, kita move. Okay. This is example. We want to let user to enter student ID and quiz. Okay. In this case, for example, this is teacher. Teacher want to enter student ID and also the quiz for each student. Okay. Only one quiz. Okay. Only one quiz for each student. So, you will ask user to enter how many number of student, and then you will create the matrix ID, the same thing previously. Okay, except that you will add another variable. The variable name is quiz, and then the length of that quiz array. Okay, array list dia similar to the num student here. So we have bracket 0 for index in range num student. Okay, and then here we're going to do the same thing as previously, except that you add here. You want to ask user to enter quiz mark. So you're going to have quiz index equal to float input. Okay. Why I use float here? Because normally assessment mark we have floating point. Okay. Okay, and then next for if you want to print, you just add this one. Print quiz mark quiz index. Okay. So here you can see that I didn't put index plus 1 here because I want to tell you index plus 1 is nothing to do with array. Okay. Okay, so let's say user said number of student is 2. User can enter matrix ID, can enter quiz mark for the student, can enter the second matrix ID, and can enter quiz mark for the second student. Okay, and then after that, your program will be able to print out matrix ID for first student, quiz mark for the first student, matrix ID for second student, quiz mark for the second student. Okay. Basically, in your memory, there will be two variable here. Okay, matrix ID, quiz. And then inside your matrix ID, you have two elements. In quiz also, you have two elements. Okay. Okay. Faham? Understand, guys? Are you okay? Atau mengantuk? Okay tak?
Okey, tengah hadam je.
Tengah hadam. Okay. Tak apa. Bila buat latihan nanti akan lebih faham lah. Okay. Okay, kita tengok contoh. Apa tu tadi? Example. Example 1. Okay. So we have here, let me comment this one first, because this one is for another example. This one also for another example. Okay. Okay, if we debug this one, we will ask user how many students. Let's say I put 5. Okay. And then when you define, or when you create this array list for metric ID, you will have this one lah. Metric ID in array, you have 5 elements because user enter 5 here. So you're going to have 5 elements of array for metric ID. Okay. And then after that, you create another variable for this array, which is quiz. Okay, so here you can see quiz also in array, and quiz have 5 elements as well, because we refer to the same variable here, num student, num student. Okay, okay, now we move to this one. For index in range num student, which is 5, our looping will be looped 5 times, starting from 0 until 4. Okay. Okay, so this one, you just print out the number. Okay, matrix ID 0. Now we are in element, the first element, which is index 0. Okay, we can ask user to enter. Let's say user enter for the first element. Okay, so you can see here, KA21999 already entered in the first element. Okay, and then for the quiz, okay, we will enter for the index 0 as well. Okay, let's say I put here 15.7. Okay. Okay, so you can see here, first element in quiz is 15.7. Okay. Now we move to the next looping, which is index 1. Okay, so for index 1, we ask user to enter. Let's say I enter AA21345. Okay, for the quiz, I will enter, let's say 16.3. Okay, so you can see here, 16.3 is entered into the second element of quiz. AA2134 is entered into the second element of matrix ID. Okay, now we move to the next looping, which is index 2. Index 2 means that the third element in matrix ID and also in quiz. Okay. Okay, so let's say I put here A, MH lah. Dalam kelas saya perasan ada MH. Okay, so we enter this one, and then for quiz, we enter, let's say, 16.7. Okay, so now you can see MH21678 is entered into the third element of matrix ID, and 16.7 is entered into the third element of quiz. Now we move to the next looping, which is index 3. Index 3 means that fourth element in that array. Yes, Satish? Satish, do you have any question?
No, doctor.
Tersalah tekan eh? Okay, so for the fourth element, let's say I enter AA20. Okay. Okay, now you can see AA20 is entered into the fourth element, which is index 3. Okay. Quiz, let's say I enter 15 point, tadi kita 7, 9. Okay. Okay, so now 15.9 is already entered into the quiz element number 4, which is index 3. Now we move to the last looping, which is index 4. Okay, let's say I enter KA. Okay. So kita ada kat situ quiz. Let's say I put 17.1. Okay. Okay, so now we have 17.1 in our fifth element. Okay, this one also KA in our fifth element of matrix ID. Okay, now we want to print out this one. Okay, so for index in range 5 means that we will loop 5 times. Okay, so we will print matrix ID index 0 refer to KA 21999, quiz mark quiz index 0 refer to 15.7. So we will print this value. Next, we move to the next looping, which is index 1. Again, we will do the same thing here. Matrix ID index 1 refer to AA21345. Quiz mark quiz index 1 we refer to 16.3. Okay. Move to the next looping, which is index 2. Matrix ID index 2 refer to MH21678. Quiz index 2 refer to 16.7. Move to the next looping, which is index 3, fourth element. Matrix ID index 3 refer to AA20876. Quiz index 3 refer to 15.9. Last looping, which is index 4. Matrix ID index 4 refer to the last element KA2765. Quiz index 4 last element 17.1. Okay, done. Okay, understand guys? I want you to redo this coding after this. Okay, boleh kelas? Understand?
Boleh.
Okay.
Boleh, Doktor.
Okay. Here, this one is only when we want to enter the input and we want to print out the output. Now we want to process the value, okay? The array value. How to process it? Let's say you want to determine average of the quiz mark. So in order for you to calculate the average mark for that quiz in that class, okay, you need to have total mark first. Okay, so now here I put here my total mark. And then I put initialize value 0. Okay. Okay. Inside my looping, I add this one. I add this formula. Total mark equal to total mark plus quiz index. Okay. Means that here, let's say for index 0, let's say the value for index 0 is 15.5, for example. So here what will happen is 0 will be plus with 15.5. Okay. So total mark will be 15.5. Okay. For the second looping, this one is index 0. Now let's say index is 1. So index 1 here. For example, the value for index 1 is 16.1. So here total mark will be, this one will be 15.5 plus with 16.1, dia dapatlah kat sini berapa value dia. Okay, so that's why we put the total mark here to increase to total up the quiz mark. Okay, okay. And then after that, I will add another statement outside the for looping. Okay, before that, outside the for looping, I add average. Average equal to total mark over num student. And outside this for looping as well, I will print the quiz mark. Okay. Okay, so let's debug. This is how to process the array value. Okay, let's clear this one. Okay, tengok betul-betul ya kelas. Now I have, for example, I have 3 students. Okay, so I have 3 elements for matrix ID, and I have 3 elements for quiz. Okay, sekejap ya. Lupa nak buka yang ni. Okay, again, I will debug this one again. Okay, I said 3. Okay, matrix ID, quiz, watermark. Okay, now we go to the for looping. For index in range num student is 3. So our looping will be looped 3 times. Okay, starting from 0 until 2. Okay, now index 0. Okay, ask user to enter the value KA 21033. Okay, now we have this one, and then for the quiz, we ask user to enter the for quiz for the first student. Let's say I put 15.5. Okay, so now you can see 15.5 is here. Okay, here total mark equal to total mark plus quiz index. Total mark, current total mark is 0 because we put the initialized value here 0. Okay, plus with quiz index 0. Quiz index 0 refer to 15.5. So 0 plus 15.5, we can have total mark, current total mark is 15.5. Okay, now we move to the next looping, which is index 1. Okay, we ask user to enter value quiz, let's say 16.7. Okay, now here, now we want to we want to add the total mark, okay, with the current quiz mark. So total mark equal to current total mark, which is 15.5, plus with quiz index 1, which is 16.7. So now we add 15.5 plus 16.7 will be 32.2. So our current total mark is 32.2. Okay, move to the next looping, which is the last looping, index 2. Okay, I put here MH20. Okay, and then quiz mark. Let's say I put 17.1. Okay, so total mark equal to current total mark. What is the value for our current total mark, class? What is the current value?
32.2.
Okay, 32.2 plus with quiz index 1, index 2, which is referred to 17.1. Okay, so we can get 49.3. Okay, so now our total mark is this value. Okay, now outside the for looping, we will calculate the average. Average equal to total mark over num student. So we get the average 16.43333. Okay, now we want to print in this output. We print the matrix ID. Okay, similar thing as previous coding. Okay, except that for the average mark, we will print the average mark here. Okay, to here. Okay, so you can do the round here lah. Okay, boleh class? Understand? Okay class? Boleh kan? Okay, nanti awak buat latihan akan lebih faham lah. Okay. Okay, so now I want you to do exercise. Okay, in this exercise, I want you to develop an array list to enter student name and student age for a certain number of students. Okay, means that here you need to ask user how many students. So after that, you need to create array list based on that number of students. Okay, for student name, for student age. And then you will ask user to enter student name and the age. Okay? Okay, faham? Understand guys? For the first exercise?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, second exercise. This is our previous example. Kan? Okay, now I want you to implement array into this coding. Okay? The sample output for this one must be like this. Okay, so you have to think how to implement array list into this coding, and the sample must be like this. Okay, you ask user the total number of value that to be calculated, and then after that you can ask user to enter the value for the first value, second value, first value, second value. Okay, and then you will print number one, value two, total. Yes, pass with B. Number two, value one, value two, total, pass with A. Okay, so this one previously this coding didn't have any array list. But now I want you to think how to implement the array list into this coding. Okay? Boleh kelas?
Okay, doctor.
Boleh eh?
Boleh.
Boleh. Kena buat latihan eh. You must do this exercise. Okay? Because this array you will implement it in your project. Class. Project question already available in Kalam. So please take a look. And then please read carefully everything inside that project. Okay? Project will carry 50% of your the whole assessment. Okay? Not 50 mark. 50%. Okay? Okay. I will give you only two exercise for today's class. Exercise 1 and exercise 2. I want you to do it. And then we will discuss next Tuesday. After we discuss this exercise, we will proceed with multi-dimensional array. Okay, class? Boleh? Can you do
Boleh.
it, class? Okay, good. Okay. Is there